morning, welcome. Today we're going to take a look at differentiating in the virtual classroom, and we're going to focus in on that and also look at the walkthrough tool that is used for observations. So let's take a look. So when it comes to differentiating in the virtual classroom, I think the big thing that we have to all consider is what's the most important concept that we want the kids to learn. We have to really acknowledge that in these times with virtual learning, that we really might not be able to cover all of the material that we need to cover. We need to focus in on what the essentials are. So don't focus on coverage, focus in on the essentials and what are the most important concepts that you want the kids to learn. I think that we have to prioritize as we start this conversation about differentiation. So what is differentiation and why does it work and how does it work? So differentiation is simply tailoring instruction to meet individual needs. So at the most basic level, it shows that the teachers are trying to respond to the variance among learners in the classroom. Whenever a teacher reaches out to an individual or to a small group and varies their teaching in order to create the best learning experience possible, that teacher is differentiating instruction. Carol Ann Tomlinson is really the expert in differentiation, and even as we move into the virtual world, she's doing a lot of new things to supplement her research on differentiation in that area. I think that it's important that we always focus in on three things when we talk about any kind of instruction, and differentiation is not different. Any good instruction needs to be student-centered, standards-based, and data-driven. So we already talked about student-centered instruction. You know, differentiation is all about taking the kids into consideration. It's got to be standards-based. We'll talk about the rigor that we need to have when it comes to differentiated instruction. But we have to be focused in on the standards, because if we're not focused in on the standards, then we're cheating all of the kids out of that. We have to be focused in on the success in our classroom based on what the standards are asking us to accomplish. And then lastly, and most importantly for today, it has to be data-driven. And we're going to look at data in just a second. There are really 7 reasons why differentiated instruction works. The first one is that it's proactive, right? The differentiated classroom is proactive. The teacher assumes that different learners have different needs, and she or he proactively plans lessons to provide a variety of ways to get at and express the learning that they need to get to the kids. It's more qualitative than quantitative. So what I mean by that is that it doesn't mean giving the kids more work. So differentiated instruction doesn't mean giving the successful kids more stuff to do or the struggling kids less work to do. It means giving all of the kids more quality work. You know, think about homework. You know, we have a lot of complaints sometimes about homework, you know, and really what the complaint is about is the quality of the work. Is this really an important activity? So I think quality is something we always have to focus in on, and good differentiated instruction is always qualitative. It's always focused on the quality of the teaching and learning and not on the quantity. It's rooted in assessment. So it could be Lexia, MobyMax, it could be classroom formative assessments, it could be writing projects, or it could be conversations, it could be writing conferences that you have with the kids. It could be any of those things. It has to be rooted in assessment, and it has to be rooted in the data that comes from that assessment. It has to show multiple approaches. So differentiated instruction shows multiple approaches to content, to process, to products, multiple approaches to the learning environment. Differentiated instruction, as I said, it's student-centered. All students won't always have the same avenues to learning equally. You know, students might have a good understanding of one concept and not another. So differentiated instruction really acknowledges that when we're teaching new concepts, it has to be built upon prior knowledge. So we're looking at where you are right now, and we're going to build upon that as we move forward. Not all students are starting at the same level, so it has to really be student-centered so that we can be successful by addressing where everyone is at right now and how that changes as we continue through the lessons. In most cases, differentiated instruction could be a blend of whole class, you know, or group instruction. I think that a lot of people assume that differentiated instruction is always small group or individual instruction. It doesn't have to be that, and it doesn't have to be disruptive to your whole class learning. You can differentiate in multiple ways and not have to totally change everything that you do. So know that it's a blend of all three of those things. It's a blend of whole class. It's a blend of group instruction. It's a blend of individual work. And I think a good blend is good for kids, so we have to remember that. And lastly, differentiated instruction works because it's organic and dynamic. Obviously, we know a lot about the content. We know a lot about our content area. But the reason why differentiated instruction is so great is because everybody learns something. I know the content, but I might not know how Johnny needs to access the content. And I can definitely learn that by teaching and seeing how he reacts to my different approaches to it. So we're learning the material as the kids. We're learning how the kids learn the material, which is a different level. So that's a great thing about differentiated instruction. So what are the 4 elements for differentiation? So what are the things that we can change? So when we differentiate and we respond to the variance among the learners that are sitting in front of us, we can change 4 components. So content is what the student needs to learn or how the student will get access to the material. So content can be differentiated. We can change reading levels. We can have kids read different leveled reading materials. We can use alternative means like audio or video. We can use small groups to deliver the content. The process might be different, which the process are the activities in which the student engages. So we might use mastery learning activities. We might use checklists. We might vary the time so that some get extra time for help and others get time to explore. So we could change the process. We could also differentiate the product. So what's the culminating process that we're asking kids to do? So when they're all done, we could either have them provide different work, or we could have them be using different rubrics to assess their work, right? So we can have different products. So whatever the culminating projects that they do are, we can change those based on our kids. And then lastly, the learning environment. So the way the classroom works and feels, that's a lot of that deals a lot with in-class, in-person learning, the learning environment. So we could set up different stations, or we could have different materials for the kids, but the learning environment can be differentiated as well. We're going to focus mostly on the top 3, content, process, and products today, but virtual instruction has definitely given us the ability to change all 4 of those things. Okay, so let's take a look at one important aspect of this, and that is that differentiated instruction isn't just for outliers. So there are students who know a good bit about a portion of the lesson or unit, but they struggle with specific steps or content. There are students whose experiences outside of the classroom, weigh negatively on their ability to concentrate or to complete work. Every student benefits from being on the teacher's radar and from seeing evidence that the teacher understands their development and plans with their success in mind. And I can't stress that enough, how important that is to the kids when they see that we're understanding where they're at developmentally and we're planning with them in mind. That's very inspiring, and it shows that we're teaching, with love, which is how we should be doing it, right? We care for these kids that we do, and we want to do our best personally and professionally for them. So let's look at some indicators. So these 7 indicators are going to be what we're looking for in the walkthrough. The first one is that is the teacher continually adapting the lesson to address student understanding. So this is on the fly. This also, shows changes that might have happened from yesterday's lessons. Maybe things are said during your lesson that show that you're adapting or changing parts of the lesson to improve student understanding. Is there an indicator that you're using data, and you're using it could be hard data, it could be just observation, and are you using that to support the kids? Are you using it to as your main motivator in knowing what to do? Are you showing the kids that you're going to be able to provide them with support during office hours or during AIS or RTI periods? Are you scaffolding instruction in the tasks that the kids are going to do to allow them to access it, to allow them to access the grade level content? And are you demonstrating and allowing them to demonstrate independent understanding without reducing the rigor? That's a big concept that we're going to talk about in a minute, is not reducing the rigor to always teach up. So are you scaffolding in the instruction? Is there a chance for pre-teaching and reteaching? Is there a chance for reinforcement and maybe student are put in small groups? Are you differentiating the activities for use in groups or learning areas? Are the kids' home languages and dialects, are they accepted? So are we addressing in our building, our dual language kids or our ENL kids? Are we addressing their needs? And are we helping them to leverage their native languages? We'll talk about that specifically in a minute. And are we leveraging technology to meet the needs of the individual students? So it could be online intervention, it could be audio, video, etc. So let's look at data, right? So what are some kinds of data that we have? So we've got past data. Last year we had much more past data because we had kids in the classroom before they went out virtually. So past data, consider what you have access to, right? Consider what you already knew about your students prior to remote learning. This year we don't have quite the benefit, at certain grade levels. In the high school, maybe we knew the kids already. How can you leverage that? But there's also, formative and summative data that we have access to. We can look at past test results. We can look at past benchmark indicators. We can look at, prior scores in Lexia and MobyMax, et cetera. So there is some past data we have access to. But then how are we collecting data as we progress throughout the school year? So what kind of formative data? So formative data meaning that this data changes instruction. What kind of formative data do we have, right? Consider how can you use the learning management system. So how can you use Infinite Campus? How can you use Schoology, et cetera? How can you use Lexia, MobyMax? How can we use those things to assess the students? How can we track their progress? How can we collect progress monitoring data? So we've got to look at that data that we're in the middle of right now. And then lastly, what kinds of non-academic data can you collect and how will you collect it? So to really help you see the whole child, you have to really give thought to how you'll replace those personal touch points that we normally have. We don't have those in virtual instruction. Those little conversations in the hallway where we ask, hey, are you okay? Did you do okay in this? What's going on? We just had a teacher share some personal information about one of the students that we all teach that was important to us. So that non-academic data, how do we make up for those touch points? One of the ways to do that might very well be to do it during office hours, during asynchronous time, but we can reflect that in our lessons by taking those things into consideration. So I want you to think about those three types: past, in progress data, now formative data, and then the non-academic part. So what are some data points? So your data points might be real-time checks. So when you're in the lesson, you might do thumbs up, thumbs down. You might do polls. You can do questions. You can embed Microsoft Forms into it, or the polling feature in Microsoft Forms. You can ask open-ended questions and have the kids respond in the chat. You could do a waterfall technique where you have them type up their answers but not hit the send button until you tell them to. You could use online discussions in Schoology to get that kind of data for real-time checks. Nearpod's a good way of doing it, which brings us to some of the web platforms. So how are you utilizing the web platforms like Nearpod, Edpuzzle, online quizzes? You can do online quizzes in Schoology. You could stop and take those. If you're showing them a lesson that involves video, you could embed the questions into the video. So those are good data points to pull. Monitoring the Infinite Campus gradebook, right? So you can color code the gradebook and see passing grades in green and failing grades in red. You can easily look at that and see how the activities break out and how what activities did kids struggle on, which assignments did more kids struggle on than another one. You can also see which kid is struggling on the most number of assignments by doing that. There's also a trend line that shows as the kid moves through the marking period where they've struggled or what time did they struggle. So maybe when you came to that critical concept in math, you see the next couple lessons a giant dip for Johnny. maybe that's something you can utilize that data to say, okay, what skills did he miss on in that? Let's look at some of the other data points and see what caused that dip. Oh, it was because he did not understand order of operations. So when he went on to the next levels in math, that order of operations was making all of his answers wrong. I know that from a personal level. When I progressed into pre-calculus and calculus, that sometimes I struggled at algebra. So how did that first step really mess me up as I moved along? So sometimes you can see that in a trend line. What about mastery-based learning? So Pear Deck or using quizzes and exit tickets. Like, did I master the concept? So having an exit ticket, whether it's in a discussion board or an online quiz or in the chat, and looking at the student answers, a quick write, and then coming in the next day and saying, okay, I saw that everybody had a little bit of problems with this particular thing in the content. Not everybody understood osmosis based on the exit ticket. So I want to review that before we talk about the next step. Okay, so those are the kind of instructions, kind of data points that really fuel future instruction and differentiation. Using rubrics in Schoology. So the rubric, you can easily in multiple things like in Google Classroom, in Schoology, you can easily create your own rubric. There's a variety of templates available. You can use single point rubrics or more in-depth ones. You're looking at the rubric, let's say I'm doing a writing assignment. If I look at the rubric, I can easily tell what my kids are struggling with. Are they struggling with forming an argument, which is one of my rubric points? Are they struggling with organization? Are they struggling with grammar usage and mechanics? However I build that rubric, I can look at the data and see how they stack up on those different points. If I do it in Schoology, I can actually pull the data and look at it as a whole and see where the whole class might be struggling as well. So rubrics are a great way to assess learning and almost like a mastery learning kind of piece. I could create portfolios. So I can easily do this in class notebook. I could easily do this electronically. I have the kids create portfolios and I can constantly go in there throughout the year and see how their writing has improved. I can see how their skills have improved in that way. And then, we've had this all happen, where we've handed everything back and then we don't have any samples. So keeping portfolios is a great way to do it. And electronically, we can do that, by asking for the stuff to be submitted electronically, or we can do it by, scanning stuff in, et cetera. And then lastly, formative assessment. So I could use some of the previous state assessments or previous regions exams at the high school level, and I can use Castle Learning or eDoctrina. I could create things in Schoology. I can give kids things that will give them a test of where are they going to end up when they get to that exam. How are they going to do? What's their future performance look like? So again, student-centered, standards-based. So these kind of things would be standards-based. So based on the standards, how can I predict their future performance? So that's of huge importance to us. So let's look at some things about adapting the lesson. So teachers should be checking for understanding throughout the lesson. They should address misconceptions. This is a huge thing. Right is right. That's a classic Doug Lemov, teach like a champion thing, right? Like the right answer is the right answer, and you should not accept anything less. So we should address misconceptions at the point of contact and then before we move on. Are you providing alternate ways to respond so that the kids have multiple ways to do that? Are they using virtual manipulatives? So you could easily set up PowerPoints that you share with the kids using OneDrive assignment app or Google Slides, sharing Googles, the Google Classroom. The kids could manipulate things. So let's say you're going to do a simple sort. You could create a slide with different pieces on it. The kids can sort it out. You have a diagram in science you want the kids to do. Create it in Microsoft PowerPoint. Put the different labels for the pieces of the diagram. So let's say, it's the heart and you need to identify the aorta and the valves, etc. You could create different templates for that and the kids could slide them in and send it back to you. So are you using manipulatives? Are you assessing and addressing engagement? So are you chunking your lessons? Are you giving the kids some breaks, some time to process? Are you trying some new instructional strategies? Are you monitoring their confidence lessons? So this could be a simple fist to 5 activity, which we have done multiple times in the past. From fist to 5, how do you feel about this? 5 being you're totally confident, right? And having the kids do a fist to 5 that way. They could do it electronically as well by a poll of some sort. You could easily embed those into your Teams meeting through Microsoft Forms. Are you using screening measures? So do you show that you're using STAR, et cetera? Are you pulling those extra worksheets from Lexia to do some help with the kids? Are you grouping students during the breakout sessions, et cetera? So how are you doing that? Are you pairing them in similar groups, or are you having kids work with each other? Are you putting a high with a low? How are you breaking up your groups? Are you varying the way that you break up your groups? Are you tailoring the lessons to individual students? I guess that's what we've been talking about all along, and we'll continue in this presentation. Are you determining the scaffolds that the kids need? So what kind of scaffolds do they need to move on to the next piece? And are you providing them textually, verbally? How are you providing the scaffolds for them? Are you selecting appropriate resources, and are you determining flexible groupings? To scaffold instruction, it really, a lot of it is proper modeling and explicit instruction. So are you using the I do, we do, you do model? Are you properly modeling what you want the kids to do, giving them some time to practice before you set them free, and then work through the groups with them and see and monitor how they're doing? It's a little tougher to do virtually than it is when you're in the classroom and doing small groups or able to walk around the room. But we should be using that gradual release of responsibility model, because kids often work best when they work independently based on something we've shown them how to do, and then they work it out for themselves. I think of my daughter's high school math, and they did everything in a flipped classroom. So the teacher would give them a video of how to do something, and then they would spend the whole class the next day, having watched the video, working on activities. And they would work on the activities, and the teacher would be able to walk around the room and help them solve problems based on what she had already taught them, and they had the video, so they could always access it again. So that gradual release of responsibility model is a great one that you can use multiple ways, even virtually. Using tools and strategies like graphic organizers, manipulatives, those are always a great way to differentiate. You could have graphic organizers where you have different levels of things filled out. So one kid could have the whole thing empty, and another could have some of the parts filled out. You can scaffold based on what the kids' needs are and where they are at level-wise. Maybe there's no way that one kid would finish this activity in 10 minutes without you giving them some of the things filled in that they already know. The other kid can definitely do that and a lot more in the 10 minutes. So you're giving them various levels of completion on the graphic organizer. So you can do that in Schoology by individually assigning it, or you can assign in groups. You can create grading groups in Schoology, maybe based on a skill or some kind of mastery learning objective that you had. So you can do that. Are you providing visual supports? You can provide sentence starters for kids. It's very useful for some, or sentence frames. You could provide directions orally, and in writing you could use visuals. One great way to differentiate is to record things so people can go back and watch it multiple times. You can vary the number of problems that a kid gets. So you can have everyone do the same number of problems, or you can vary the number that they do. You can give kids specific problems that focus in on a need to see if they have met mastery in a certain concept. You can give them a couple more of those questions in there. So it should always be sort of a recursive process that we're going back to. Are you building on prior knowledge? Do you highlight content in academic language? So are you really building in on those tier 2 and tier 3 words and trying to really focus on teaching up? We can use closed captioning during the Teams meetings. So if I turn that on in the Teams meeting and if I have the kids turn it on during the Teams meeting, or if I turn it on while I'm doing a PowerPoint, the kids will see that language across the bottom of the screen, and that will be really useful for them. So I'm in PowerPoint right now. If I turn on the closed captioning, I can see it on my presentation screen. You can't. Let me move my camera out of the way, but you can see it here. So if you're using PowerPoint, you can use the closed captioning, and that will definitely help build that up. I think it's great for our English language learners, especially. They can see the words in English. I think of words like, epitome or hyperbole. You don't know that word, and then you see it and you go, oh, that's what that word is? That's how you pronounce epitome? I thought it was epitome. So it's very helpful to have that in there. And again, how can you use technology? So it's all about how you can use technology to support the kids. You can also use translated documents. Okay, I'm going to turn off my closed captioning. Okay, so moving forward, teacher-led small group instruction. So this might not take place in a virtual environment, but if we were in the physical classroom, It would be easy to do. But it could take place in breakout rooms. So we could have supervised breakout rooms that we bounce back and forth between. So we can have kids in there in small groups, and we can have them working on different activities, or we could have them working on the same activity. Maybe they're jigsawing, but we've got groups based some way about specific kids and what the specific kids need, some kind of support they need. Maybe we give them the support of a stronger student, etc. We can schedule a time for the kids to come in for office hours. We can give them leveled readers or we can give them different parts of the Gale database. Maybe we could work with the librarian, Ms. Cow, to do that. We can pre-teach or reteach. We can show work samples in small groups. So I can pop into the room and I can show the kids an example of some things and review those work samples with them. I can use my aides and assistants strategically. They can monitor the group, but they can also help to share the materials. Okay. Am I allowing for choice in assignment? That's a great way to differentiate, giving kids a choice in it. So do they have a choice of the product that they want? So maybe I want to give them, to explore a certain topic. I want the kids to explore the Great Migration that took place. Maybe I want to let some kids write an essay, and I want to have some kids have the ability to do it in a multimedia way. Maybe a kid's going to produce a video on it or produce a lesson on it. Okay, I could vary that. Or I could give everybody the same topic, and I could give everybody the same product, but vary the topic. So everybody has to write an essay, but you can pick what you want to write about. Okay, or everybody has to create a video, but you can pick what you want to do the video about. That's a big, important one. We could provide may-do activities. So I could give a menu. Like I could create a slide with multiple activities. So let's say I have 20 activities in a slideshow presentation in PowerPoint or Google Slides. I could color code those activities, and I could say, I want you to do 6 of these activities. I want you to do 3 green activities, and I could color code the green ones. These are the must-dos. Everybody has to do the 3 green ones. I want you to do 2 yellow activities. These are the ones that I'm going to allow some choice. And then I want everybody to do 1 of the red activities. These are really the advanced ones. Maybe these are the activities that are tomorrow's lesson. But I want everybody to do one so I can get a step and see what you might struggle with tomorrow, right? And then when you're done with these activities in the PowerPoint, I want you to take the 6 slides that you did, the 3 green, 2 yellow, and 1 red, and I want you to slide them up to the top of the PowerPoint. So when I go into OneDrive assignment app, I can easily look at the first 6 things and see what you did, how you did on each of them. Okay, so that's a great way to do it. You can do it in Google Slides. You can do it on physical paper when the kids come back in too. Give them a menu of things to do. So this kind of must-do, may-do activity ideas. We can tailor assignments to specific student needs. So using the Lexia data, et cetera, things like that. We can use those online programs. We can give them specific skills that they are missing out on and tailor the assignments to those specific needs. We could create folders. We already talked about portfolio assessments. We could have folders in Schoology and say, go in here and grab those things out of there. We can have different tiers of assignments, creating tasks with the same learning goals, but different levels of challenge or complexity. And we can create activities that accelerate or extend the learning, okay? To demonstrate, for the students that have mastery, that have demonstrated that, we can have accelerated or extended learning activities for them. Okay. Home language learners. Are we grouping students for home language support? Are we assigning them with are we assigning our aides and assistants if we have them in that classroom, or student leader that we have? Are we assigning them in the breakout rooms to help those kids? Are we helping really to build skills utilizing their home language and pushing them forward? Are we using multilingual dictionaries? Are we using some translanguaging support? We've talked with Maiva and Caitlin about how to do some of those things, and we'll continue to work with our dual language support staff to do those kind of things. Are we using cognates and things like that with the kids to really build upon their knowledge and to use their home language as an asset? And then leveling technology, right? Are we using teams effectively? Are we able to provide individualized support using teams? Can we house differentiated assignments in Schoology? Can we use intervention programs like MobyMax and Lexia to help kids in differentiated instruction that way, and again, collect more data? Can we create online quizzes that kids have to work their way through, right? So they automatically assign, differentiated follow-up activities. Are we allowing kids to have multiple ways to submit work? So technology allows us to have kids submit videos and audio in addition to just text all the time. Are we using digital tools to facilitate interactive roundtables? So we could do interactive roundtables or discussions. We could do jigsaw activities. We could do debates. We could do those things electronically. Are we utilizing Microsoft Forms to collect data? Are we utilizing it to collect information from the kids? Are we utilizing it to collect products? Are we using the OneDrive assignment app, which is really an easy way to use any Microsoft tool and easily put those into folders inside of your OneDrive, which is a great thing. Are we using online labs? So when we come back, when we're in asynchronous time, will we have a lab that kids can go in and utilize those tools and do their work that's assigned, and we can help support them that way? Are we using audio and video? The nice thing about audio and video is that kids can watch it multiple times or listen to it multiple times. Are we using educational games? Do kids have the ability to use response systems, so they could use some kind of polling system? I know we used to use clickers and things like that, but there are other online tools that allow us to do that. They can text in things like that as well. Are they creating interactive presentations and lessons that allow them to work independently to respond to various questions? And are we providing time for meaningful feedback? So can we take the OneDrive assignments that the kids do, and we can individually meet with them and provide meaningful feedback? We can put notes, we can put memos in their work and paste them into the actual digital content, or we can mark up their OneNote notebook and put things in there, or in the Google Doc that they create. Are we giving them good feedback that way? So those are some ideas and examples of work. And again, these ideas and examples, they might be process, they might be content, they might be product, but we can vary those three things to be successful. So I hope the walkthrough tool, you got a good idea of what that looks like for your walkthrough, but more importantly, not just basing this on evaluations, but I hope that this information helps you to have multiple ways that you can differentiate instruction and use data and standards-based content to really help push the kids forward into those 21st century skills that they need. Again, if you need anything, I'm always here for you. Feel free to make an appointment or book an appointment with me. You can do that in the Schoology group. Click on the link that's in there in my folder in the resources, or in my email signature, which I know you get a lot of emails from me. Click on the thing to set up a time. We can sit down and look at how to differentiate before you get observed, or just for the sake of doing it for good lessons. We can talk about differentiation and work together to make it a successful year for all of us. So thanks very much. I hope that's helpful. I will provide the PowerPoint as well, and I hope you get a chance to make use of it. Thanks, and have a great day.